and anybody else who's here this morning. Uh, Good morning. I'm very excited and um, thrilled to be talking to you today about foods and nutrition that we can use to improve our mood. Specifically, why it's close to my heart is because when we withdraw or we stop taking a very addictive substance, like, for example, alcohol, our dopamine gets depleted, and as a result, we feel down, we feel lethargic. So that might be you this morning. So often I hear about from 3 weeks on to 6 months to longer, where it's almost periodically that people will tell me that they feel like they've lost all motivation, that life feels bleak, and they feel lethargic, and they just don't know what to do, and maybe they should just start drinking again. It is one of the reasons why we relapse, is because we have the sense of absolute lack of motivation. So I want to focus on that today and really speak about how you can shift that through specifically food and nutrients. And I think that's very exciting because sometimes we're not aware that how these foods and how these nutrients and these amino acids, how they all interplay for us, and how if we know and we get to really understand our body, we become the orchestrator. We run this orchestra that is our body. We make it sing, we make it play beautiful music. It's all up to us. It's all within us. And I find that incredibly empowering. So I want to share that with you. I'm going to share some tools, and I'm also going to caution you that whatever I am saying here today, advising here today, or the knowledge I'm sharing with you is really a lot about my point of view from research that I've done, and it's not necessarily mainstream. A lot of it is. So I'm going to refer you to some really good research sites that you can visit to get clarity on the studies that have been done about these foods and nutrients that I'm going to talk about and how they interact and interplay. One of them is a beautiful resource called examine.com, and examine.com is free. And what they do is they share with you all the studies that have been done around certain nutrients and food, and what we often say that they do and how they influence us. So examine.com, I'm going to refer to some published medical articles. And if you want to find out more, you're welcome to research there. Another resource that I use is a doctor, a neuroscientist called Dr. Andrew Huberman, and he talks extensively about dopamine and serotonin and how they interplay. So, and of course, from the neuroscience of how we motivate and how the neurochemicals play in our mind. So, good morning. We have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to probably get right into it and then check on you guys afterwards and comment and interact with you. And if I don't get to do it today, right now on this Facebook Live, I will come in and check in later and respond. And if you would like to, please feel free to message me directly if you would like to have some more information. But to get started, I want to just talk about the body-mind interplay and how we are really this beautiful, complete organism where the one interacts with the other. We're not just separate brain to separate body. They work together beautifully, and what connects the two is the vagus nerve. I'm not going to go into explaining the vagus nerve in depth because it's quite complex, but if you can just understand that the vagus nerve runs from the brain through through into every organ of our body, like a superhighway. And it senses what's going on in the gut, it senses what's going on in the lungs and the heart and all of our organs. And then it sends that information back to the brain. And then the brain, from that information, starts creating certain neurotransmitters and chemicals and responds. So that two, so that's how we really do connect with the brain and the body, is through the vagus nerve. And a lot of people say we should stimulate it. It's not about stimulating it. It's the vagus nerve senses, and then it also gets into the motor. It motors on certain responses from the brain. So it's a superhighway. It gives information to the brain and then brings information from the brain back to the body. Simple way to put it. So what I find so interesting about this is, for example, if we just look at sweetness and sugar, um, when we consume sugar, the what gets sent back to the brain is a dopamine hit. And what is even more interesting is that we don't have to taste it. So they did these studies where they blindfolded people and they gave them sugar enriched foods, and that they couldn't taste, that they couldn't see, and yet when they ingested them, there would be a dopamine response in the brain. Why is this important? It's important because so many hidden sugars are in our food. And what they do is they give an, like with alcohol, and Marianne Shearer speaks about this if you want to listen to the podcast where Janet interviews her about um, refined sugars and how they really just cause havoc in our body, do that. But what was interesting from this study is that even though we don't necessarily know that we're ingesting sugars, the vagus nerve and the senses it and then gives it information back to the brain. So we can be eating some pizza and it's got sugar in it and we don't understand why we want more and more. So refined sugars that give a very intense dopamine hit will then get us crashing afterwards. We don't even know we're ingesting the sugars. We think, which is also one of the reasons why fast foods and foods that we're not sure about are not ideal. So when you go on this path where you really want to heal your brain body from depression, fast foods, foods high in refined sugars and in flour should really be like a no-no. So let's look at one of the other things that is really important that the vagus nerve does. It senses when we have enough nutrients and amino acids in the gut, and then sends that information to the brain, and the brain then creates the neurotransmitters. Very important to know that, because if there's a depletion, we can then stimulate it from the gut to the brain, and even though we think it's made in the gut, it's actually the nutrients are what the vagus nerve transports back to the brain. And we also then need to know why we are often feeling depleted is because there's maybe the vagus nerve is not sensing enough amino acids. And amino acid L-tyrosine is the one that is a precursor to dopamine. So L-tyrosine you can find in foods such as chicken, turkey, fish, almonds, avocado, banana, milk, beans, seeds. Those foods are very rich in L-tyrosine. And L-tyrosine foods create the amino acid that goes to the brain and then creates dopamine naturally. So when we get it from food, wholesome foods like avocados and natural fats, it's much, it's, sorry, it is slower. The release and the uptake is slower. So it takes a while for us to really feel the difference. So I just want to caution on that. So often um, we want it quick. We want the quick fix. I know this about me, so I'm going to caution you again. A lot of you are going to say, oh my gosh, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to get L-tyrosine and I'm going to supplement with it, and it's going to solve my problem. Too much L-tyrosine will do the opposite. It can give you the crash the next day and brain fog. Very interesting. When we overstimulate our dopamine through sugars and alcohol and drugs, as you know, there is often a crash afterwards. So we want we want our body and our brain to be in sync. So let's give it foods that will stimulate L-tyrosine, and if necessary, if you're feeling really lethargic, this is the time that you would want to supplement with L-tyrosine, or take a really good amino. I find just taking a really good amino supplement that has a shake that has all of the amino acids in it, helpful to me to know that I'm getting them all in and in the right ratio. A really good product that I love is Metagenics. Metagenics Ultra Inflammix is what I go to when I feel very depleted, and somehow I'm not getting the nutrients and the amino acids um, through to my brain. Then I would supplement, but do it in short bursts, not in like long, ongoing, and more is more. It's one of the lessons that I had to learn, and I'll talk about it even when I get to gut health, where I also thought more is more. So L-tyrosine, what is also very interesting is they found a bean, a velvet bean called Mucuna pruriens. Mucuna pruriens. It's This bean has a very velvety outside layer makes that if you touch it makes you very itchy, and it's actually very rich in serotonin. But inside the bean is L-dopa, which converts to dopamine. So it's a beautiful supplement to take when you are feeling really depleted, because it gives you a bit of both. It gives you the L-dopa, which is the precursor of dopamine, and it also gives you the serotonin from the outside layer of the bean. So you can buy it from health shops. Again, the caution from studies, if you look, you can go to examine.com, they talk about it. It's a fantastic supplement. However, use it with care, don't overuse, and use as and when required. So if you're at the point where you're really just depleted, yes, go and get a supplement. And when you're feeling yourself boosted, while you're supplementing, also start eating the L-tyrosine enriched foods. And then when you are at a good space and you feel motivated, you will always know when you are short on dopamine. It's when you lack motivation, when you feel no pleasure anymore. It's a key sign, and that is when we up it. You can ramp it up. And take on some supplements. And then I want to talk about serotonin, because dopamine gets us up, it gets us motivated, it gets us into action. But serotonin I call my Goldilocks moment. It's that feeling of bliss, just that feeling, that feeling of everything is just right in the world. You are satiated, you obtain serotonin from eating lots of carbohydrates. So when you're feeling full and whole, it starts to produce, and it also produces in a part of the brain. So even a lot of us think that serotonin comes from the gut, but it's a combination. The gut sends through the messages via the vagus nerve to the brain. There is enough here, you can create serotonin and the feel good feeling. So if I want to really see when someone in action who is where the serotonin is flowing and this little being is just so happy, it's my cat Charlie. So Charlie, when he has his breakfast or when he has his food, he just rolls on the carpet, he stretches out, and he purrs, he is happiness. And then he is on the couch and he just falls asleep, and then he gets motivated again by food, of course. But I look at that, and I also had a moment like that last night where I thought, this is how you get the serotonin flowing. And I had some of my dear friends over for dinner last night, and I ordered sushi, lots of sushi. And by the by the end of the meal, we were all so blissed out. We were exhausted. We just all wanted to go to sleep. And I realized it was because of the rich carbohydrates. I mean, a lot of the rice and the ingredients in sushi, I think promote serotonin. And serotonin is really that here and now neurotransmitter where you just feel good, you feel blissed out. When you don't have enough serotonin, um, you feel depressed. You feel life has no color. You don't get joy out of anything anymore. And sometimes you might just want to sleep. It's what we call, when you have depressive disorder, it's often serotonin depletion, and you can have it with anxiety. So if you have depression with anxiety, then it shows up as a lot of worry thoughts about the future. When you have depression with certainty, you will have thoughts like, I'll never find someone to love me. I'll never find the perfect job. So what's the use anyway? So those are two different ways to look at what's happening. But in both cases, and to stimulate serotonin, they talk about a supplement called 5-HTP. So 5-HTP you can also get over the counter. Again, I would say take it as and when needed, not consecutively and not for long periods of time. And if you want to find out more about it and the side effects, you can get that information at examine.com. 5-HTP can make you very sleepy. It can induce deep sleep, so it is good to take it if you're not sleeping well at night, but not too early, because if you take it too early in the evening, then you're going to feel very sleepy, like we did with all the sushi yesterday. And by 9 o'clock, you want to go to bed, and then 3 o'clock, you are awake. So get to know yourself. And when I talk about these nutrients and these neurotransmitters and how they interact in your body, it's very unique. We are all uniquely designed, and our uptake of these transmitters and how they um, present in our brain and how they get manufactured is individual to us. And when you get to know really how it works for you, it's very helpful. Foods that are So 5-HTP, what it contains is tryptophan, and tryptophan is the neurotransmitter for serotonin. It's what makes us feel calm. It's what makes us feel blissed out. And foods that are really rich in tryptophan are eggs, seeds, nuts, spinach. So again, up your seeds, up your nuts, eat lots of spinach. Um, and in the evening, and eat, because those are also carbohydrate rich foods. So find some really good carbohydrates in the greens that will stimulate your tryptophan. And then I want to talk about a very important fatty acid that interplays with our brain health, and that is omega 3s. Our bodies can't naturally make omega 3, so we need to supplement with it, or we need to get lots of it from sources like fish. So fish has high omega 3. Um, some other flaxseed oil, hemp seed, chia also have omega 3s. But I didn't realize, and when I found this out, it was very interesting. When you take a supplement with omega 3, make sure it's very high in EPA. The EPA content should be at least 1,000 milligrams if you're depressed. And they did a study, and it's a study that's actually published in PubMed. If you want the study, let me know and I'll share it afterwards. But what they studied was they had two groups of people. One group they gave omega-3 with and the EPA dosage of 100 milligrams. The other group they gave Prozac, or the ingredient of Prozac, which is I think fluoxetine, um, and then and 20 milligrams of it. So they gave 20 milligrams of Prozac to one group and 1,000 milligrams of EPA from fish oil to the other group. And after 6 weeks, what they discovered was that both groups, their depression was equally lifted. So the depression was hugely reduced in both groups, but even more so in the groups that were taking the omegas. So I thought that was really quite fascinating. So if you're feeling very depressed, one of the ways to lift yourself is to take at least 1,000 milligrams of omega-3, which is EPA, where the EPA is at least 1,000 milligrams. So when I looked at my omega-3, I thought it was a really good brand. It only had 75 grams of it was EPA. The rest was well, I can't remember now what the other part is that makes up omega-3. So I thought, so actually I would have to take almost 10 of these a day to get the EPA equivalent. So Metagenics again has a really good omega-3 supplement where the ratio is higher. The EPA ratio is the higher one. Have a look at your supplement. Make sure it's a really good supplement, because a lot of the fish, the salmon that we eat, where we can get it from, is very high in mercury. So a really good supplement will take the mercury out. I know if you are a vegan, can get it from flax seeds, but again, I think you need to combine many different seeds to get the EPA ratio from plant-based only. So a plant-based supplement that will give you that has sourced all of these plants is a really good one. The one that I really like to use for that is Vibrant Health. So just putting it up there. Vibrant Health has all of the beautiful aminos, nutrients, and fatty acids that we need. And it's good. And if you don't like to eat animal protein or animals for ethical reasons, a supplement like Vibrant Health or Athletic Greens, very good alternative. What I also want to just talk about quite quickly here is they also did studies where people's ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 was higher. So in studies, when your omega-6 is higher than your omega-3, you will be depressed. You will have signs of high inflammation. So if your inflammation markers are high, you're probably ingesting a lot of omega-6 compared to your omega-3. They also, in their studies, found that if you have a high intake of omega-6, then antidepressants don't really help. So get your omega-3s up, get your omega-6s down, which is really your fried foods that release a lot of omega-6. Which is, again, if you are depressed, if you are feeling lethargic, cut out your omega-6s, your fried meats, and interestingly enough, meat from grass-fed cows that is organic actually is high in omega-3. The fat is high in omega-3. And particularly if they are only grass-fed. It's when you start giving cows grains that their meat becomes very high in omega-6. So grains, if you're eating a lot of grains, those are omega-6s. So just a caution on that. If you're feeling low, watch your ratio between the two. Then I want to talk about another amino acid. It's called L-carnitine. L-carnitine it's one of the amino acids that they say that crosses the brain-blood barrier. Now, I won't get into what that so much about that, but what it just means is that there is a brain-blood barrier, the triple B, to protect the brain from harmful contaminants, so that harmful chemicals can't get into the brain and destroy it. So, it's quite difficult sometimes to break that barrier. But one of the amino acids that does that is L-carnitine. And L-carnitine helps with withdrawal from addictive substances. So you probably, if you've done some research, will have heard if you are um, stopping alcohol at this time, it's probably a good idea to supplement with L-carnitine. L-carnitine also energizes the mitochondria, and the mitochondria is our life force. It's how we can measure how alive and energized we are. So L-carnitine will provide a lot of energy to the mitochondria. When the mitochondria depletes, you start feeling very low in energy. It's almost like the life force drains from you. And I remember a friend of mine saying to me when her husband was passing away from colon cancer, that she could really see that in action, how daily the life force would drain out of him. And this is related to the mitochondria. And you can research on the mitochondria and how to energize it. It's really the body's ability to repair itself and to absorb nutrients to repair the cells. So L-carnitine is very good for that. It helps to reduce cravings. It also reduces pain. So it's a very good supplement to use if you are having fibromyalgia. It's very good to use in polycystic ovary syndrome. It's also apparently very good. They've had some really good results in studies that they did on people who suffer from migraines. If they took in L-carnitine, that was very helpful. However, what is quite interesting is L-carnitine is mainly found in red meat. So I think there are a few plants. I try to find the plants that have it. I didn't find any specifically. So I think that might also be why a lot of the time, if we're not ingesting a lot of meat, and we still feel inflamed, and we still have high inflammation markers, or we have pain. It could be, or we are depressed. It could be because of the lack of L-carnitine. Again, I had a good friend who was vegan from very young. From when she became a teenager, she decided that ethically she couldn't eat meat and dairy, so she became vegan. And when she was very stressed later on, when her body wasn't able to work with stress very well, and she would get very sick, and her immunity just dropped, and she just kept getting sick and kept getting flu, and eventually a naturopath advised her to drink bone broth. So bone broth is very good for L-carnitine. It's very high in L-carnitine. Again, I would say if you don't have an ethical problem and you want to supplement L-carnitine through food, then I would say boil up some free-range grass-fed bones from cows and drink it like a soup. I think you just need like a tiny little tot of it every night. You can also get it now in health shops where you can actually buy bone broth. And then in closure, I don't think I can not talk about the gut and the gut microbiome, and of course how that relates to our mood. As I've already spoken, a lot of the vagus nerve transmits a lot of information from the gut to the brain back to the gut. So gut health is almost like the foundation of it all. It's the compost from which all health springs. So you want to make sure that your gut microbiome is healthy. Of course, for me, I thought I need to supplement with lots of probiotics. You can over supplement probiotics. The gut is just, and the vagus nerve, when they interact, they sense what's going on in there. The bacteria within the gut wants to how do you say, become more. It just wants to grow. It wants to um, promulgate itself. So whether it's good or bad, it doesn't really care. So if you're giving it too much good, and too much good also causes an overgrowth. You're going to feel very lethargic. You're going to feel very blah and very heavy. So you want to get your gut microbiome just right. And apparently all you need is, what's really good to eat is fermented foods, like kimchi, sauerkraut, but again, in small portions only. You don't need to over supplement. And me having done that and really having had big issues with that, because I overstimulated my gut microbiome with so much additional probiotics and prebiotics, I had to. One of the ways that my naturopath actually advised me to heal the gut was through intermittent fasting, where exactly how it works, I'm not going to get into here, but if you intermittent fast, your the healthy and the good microbiomes kind of almost eat themselves in the gut, and then you get and then when you take in the healthy ones through food, through you start to heal. So intermittent fasting is really when you go through quite a long window of period without eating or ingesting any food. It's also, I think, what they call the ketogenic diet. Again, research that for yourself. But what you want to get healed is your gut microbiome. And because the gut microbiome is also where our immunity is based, it's where our amino acids get synthesized, it's where absorption is. It's so important. And of course, we all know that a lot of alcohol does affect the gut microbiome. And so that's kind of what I wanted to touch on today. And then in closing, just talk about mindsets. Because yes, the body and the mind connection, I've spoken about it really just from a purely biological concept today, or biologically what happens and how you can stimulate your mood. So and how you can get a healthy mind, a healthy body. But of course, I would be very you have to also also have to bring in the other behaviors to really get yourself into the best version of yourself. So just for mindset and the power of mindset, they did a study which they called the milkshake study, where they gave two separate groups of people the same milkshake, a healthy milkshake, and they told the one group that it was highly lots of calories in here, very indulgent, lots of nutrition, like absolutely wonderful. And then they told the other ones that this was a restricted shake. It did have all the nutrients in it, however, very low calories. And then they measured a peptide called ghrelin. And ghrelin is our hunger hormone. And it tells us when we are full or whether we are hungry. And it's often because of the way we've eaten. And these days, it's one of the hormones that is out of sync. But very interestingly, when they did the study, what they found is that it also makes us feel satiated. So the people who were told that their shake was very indulgent and very nutritious and very rich in calories, they afterwards their ghrelin peptide reduced. It was like their hunger reduced, the cravings reduced, and the others who drank exactly the same shake, their hunger increased, the ghrelin peptide increased in their body, so they were more hungry. And I'm just leaving that with you is because also what they then found is that our minds and our thoughts really do create a lot of our how our body and mind interact together. Another study was when they did the study with Wim Hof and his breath work, and they pumped him full of E. coli, and it had absolutely no effect on him. They couldn't believe that he ingested E. coli and had none of the symptoms of E. coli. So the mind body is very fascinating. I want to just say in closure, and I want to just also say that when you are on this path, yes, become very vested in the kind of food and nutrients that you ingest. But just as important, one compound is not going to shift your life. It's not going to, even if you take all the right foods and all the right ingredients, if your mindset isn't positive, if you're not doing the work in terms of getting out there, getting some sunshine, exercising, connecting with people, and getting good sleep, you're not going to be having an optimal life. So that's it from me today. It was a lot of information, and I hope that you found it helpful and useful. And I'll just go and see who's here. Hi, Irene. Hi, Sue and Flick. Shares, good to see you. And I didn't even check in with you guys. And Natasha, you are here. Very good. Let me know how you found the talk. Was it valuable? Did you learn something? And yeah, so Janet, you're saying that you eat lots of nuts and omega-3s. Yes, omega-3s are really our little superpower to overcoming depression. And yeah, and supplements are very expensive, but so if you can get your intake from food, it's slower, it takes longer, shares, but it is worth it. You can up your nuts, up your seeds, um, eat omega-3 rich foods, eat lots of avocados. You look at how you can, through food, really get your nutrients, and then sit in the sun for your vitamin D, and boil some bones if you eat meat. Yeah, gut is like compost. Okay, so if you need to have our microbiome tested, Janet, we can ask you who the specialist is in Cape Town, and he can also advise us. Yeah. And Janet, you've been intermittent fasting for months. That'll be fantastic if you could do a Facebook Live about it, because I think it is one of the ways that we can really work with our mood. For example, the later in the day that we eat, the more alert we will be in the morning. So I generally don't have a meal in the morning. I'll eat only around 11 and then maybe 12. And then I will eat a protein-rich meal. Like I'll have an egg with some avocado and some asparagus and some kale. That would be my lunch, or a very, very nutritious salad with some chicken or fish. And then in the evenings, I'll tone it right down to, maybe that's when I have my wazugels. I used to have my wazugels earlier. Wazugels is it's a beautiful oatmeal that is a superfood. It's made with oats and maca, and they put all beautiful ingredients in there, and you just add hot water, and it's almost like a porridge. So I'll have that at night. Yes, Kerry, I agree. It would be an absolutely fantastic topic. So for everybody that's been here today, thank you for coming, and let me know how you go. You use food, to stimulate your mood, to shift your mood. It's in your hands, it's in your mouth, it's in your gut, it's in your body. It's your superpower. So thank you very much for everybody that was here this morning. I look forward to seeing you later, or in 2 weeks' time, I'll be doing another Facebook Live. So I'm going to say goodbye and end the live video. Bye.